Welcome to the Wake Up Call for the Soul podcast with Bill and Claire, where we go deep and wide on subjects intended to support our awakening to greater truth, beauty, goodness, freedom, joy, peace, harmony, and love. And one of the things that I was curious about, I had conversations about this. The first times I actually recall having conversations about this was in college somewhat, but even more so, I think, when I was in graduate school. And it was this question of kind of the nature of reality. Yeah, I was kind of curious, like in philosophy, they have these two schools of thought that are pitted against each other. One is called monism, the idea that everything is one, and then pluralism, the idea that everything is a bunch of separate, relatively disconnected stuff. Have you been exposed in your education up to this point, or your reading or whatever, have you been exposed to those kinds of philosophical ideas in terms of monism or pluralism, or what we might call maybe unity or separation?
I have, but it's been very, very minimal. I haven't gotten to really unpack what that all actually
Mhm.
entails.
So for yourself, I mean, when you contemplate your existence, your life up to this point, what what have you found to be the most important experiences? Or like, let's play this game. How about, let's imagine, okay, you and I, we're getting ready to transition into spirit from this life, whenever that is. And we're thinking back on our life, on our existence. I mean, what are the kinds of things that you think would come up for you as you're contemplating the end of your existence on this planet and your transition into a new plane of existence?
Like what would come up for me, what I'd be thinking
Yeah, what
about.
would you think about?
Ooh,
What thoughts, feelings, memories would kind of come up for you?
I feel like I'd be thinking about the connections I've made here. That's
Hmm.
very important to me.
Yeah.
The wisdom that I've gained while I'm here. Probably I'd be wondering, what comes next?
Hmm.
What am I going to remember? What do I get
Yeah.
to do? Um, Maybe a sense of awe or I don't know, just something whimsical, I hope. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely connections, hoping that I made some sort of a good impact.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think my sense of that is pretty similar. I think most people's is that way. And I guess when I think about, those kinds of things, I think the first word that you said, that this sense of connection, the relationships, that makes perfect sense to me because my own experiences have brought me to a certain place of recognition for myself where it's pretty much the opposite of the paradigm that I was indoctrinated with as a child in this
Hmm.
world. I was indoctrinated with the idea that doing is important, that achievement and accomplishment, and I think these are fairly middle class kinds of values, that these things are what really matters. And even material achievements, perhaps the accumulation of certain resources or wealth, perceptions related to safety and security and all that kind of stuff, that these are the things that are important. And when I look at my existence and what I'm trying to unlearn, it's pretty much everything that I just listed, that I'm
Ah,
doing my
yeah.
best to let go of these values, these ideas, and to recognize that things like relationships, connections, love, unity, harmony, purpose, not just I had a job, but like this deeper purpose that I sense for myself and that I sense exists in other people, that we have this opportunity to express things in our own unique ways that no one and nothing else in the entire cosmos can express in just the way that we can, unique perceptions and expressions of these things. So I feel like so much of what I was indoctrinated with was a doctrine of separation, of control, of domination, of the use of will and force, oftentimes against myself, in order to achieve specific objectives that my society has told me are important, that I am
Right.
supposed to value them. And, in my own way, at this point in my own journey, it's like, man, I need to I've let some of that stuff go. I've been blessed with certain privileges that help me to release some of these things. And yet I know that there are still parts of me that are playing this game or want to play this game of separation, of control, of progress according to human values, as opposed to development and growth and change that reflects my own beingness, who I deeply and truly am. Yeah, and I guess the bottom line for me with that is this distinction between unity and separation. Are the things that cause everything to be connected more important than all of the things that appear to make them separate?
Mm.
And I feel like my own perceptions have just been boxed in where I was taught words that go with things. And with that came the idea that, oh, well, if I can describe something with a word, then this is a discrete reality, that this object has boundaries that I can perceive and know and understand. When the truth is that nothing exists separate from anything else. Even though, I mean, our entire planetary pseudo reality is based on the idea that things can be separated and analyzed and controlled and all of that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a tree, but well, that tree, it's part of my lungs. I mean, because of that tree, there's just at the material level, there's oxygen it's producing. I'm producing carbon dioxide, so we are each other's lungs, for
Hmm.
example. Um, and then that tree is connected to the earth in ways that I understand, but most of the ways it is, I have no idea how it's connected to the earth, to other plants, to all of the animals that call it home. And we've gotten some of this from an ecological perspective, but I have this sense now with these energies coming in that there's so much more to perceive. Like there's so much more of these relationships, of these connections, of this fundamental unity that's available for us to perceive than we've given ourselves permission to perceive and to experience.
Yeah.
Like you're still in college. How much are you getting in college of these ideas of connection, of fundamental unity and relationship? And then, but how much are you also getting on the other side of control, separation, analysis, that kind of thing? I mean, what's your sense of that in terms of your education up to this point?
I feel like there is a lot of separation, control, that type of thing. I don't get a lot of the unity. I mean, oftentimes it just kind of bogs me down the way that professors or courses like talk about certain things. It also feels like there's not always room to talk freely about things. They'll always say like, "Oh, this is a space where you can, express your opinions." And I mean, oftentimes I feel like I have to hold back, or even I feel like I have to just say what I think my professor wants to hear, which doesn't always feel good. And it really just it seems like they're presenting us these things or things that they'll even call theories, but they're like, this is fact essentially, and like you
Mhm.
can't really argue it, and this is just how it is. Good luck. And it doesn't always feel that great. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I have to kind of get my balance through, things like talking to you or just through other means because I'm not getting it there. And I mean, I know like they're trying to get me ready for a job, but I keep thinking like it doesn't have to be that way.
The things that we think have served us so well up to this point as human beings, we will eventually come to realize that they are actually the bane of our existence, like that they're
Yes.
literally poisonous. These ideas that somehow we can take pieces and parts of reality and separate them and control them and predict outcomes. When I think about it now, it's insane. It's just it's absolutely insane. The idea that we can just take without asking is insane. I mean, I'm not saying I don't do it still myself because I'm indoctrinated that way, but when I'm feeling a bit philosophical, as in our conversations, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's insane that I think I could just take something or whatever without asking for it. Or at the very minimum, at least not expressing gratitude for it, the recognition that it's a gift. You're reminding me of a story from graduate school. I was in a philosophy course, and a key component of this philosophy course was this distinction between what we'll call monism and philosophical pluralism, the distinction between one and many. And my philosophy professor gave this example. If this was the case, it was a story of two people on campus who happened to see the same person in two different locations on the campus. He says, well, one of you is right and one of you is wrong. And I said, no, they could both be right. He just completely ignored what I said,
Ooh.
which in a world of, and I thought, oh my gosh, I thought you were like philosophers who were dealing with the nature of reality, which what I was describing, I didn't know what a Bose-Einstein condensate was then, but I was describing a large-scale Bose-Einstein condensate, which is the idea that two particles can exist simultaneously in multiple locations. And two locations is actually not a big deal for a Bose-Einstein condensate. Like, so I was actually, in my own way, proposing a possibility related to quantum mechanics that I didn't even realize was a possibility at that time. It was just completely ignored. And it was at that moment I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're not actually interested in reality. They're only interested in reinforcing their ideas of reality.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I totally get what you're talking about because if someone like you wants to bring in a connection, a relationship, into a theory or a system that doesn't recognize the importance or relevance of those things, then you're creating problems for people, right? I mean, like if you're like, well, what about this? Then they either have to ignore it or they could dismiss it and say, oh, that's not important. That's not a thing. It's not a significant variable in the equation if even is at all. It's, can't have any actual impact. Or they have to, if they actually have some humility or whatever, then be like, huh, yeah, that could be a thing. Yeah, it's so interesting because we talk about these places of education, higher learning. I mean, shoot, even religious institutions, so many different organizations and groups and entities that exist that claim to want to help us learn more about truth or reality, when in fact people's attachments to their ideas of what these things are prevent them from even engaging in a conversation that could help us to perceive more truth and reality.
Hmm.
Oh, the irony.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Like you have, and I see this in so many different places in communities and groups where people will be like, "Oh, there's no stupid questions here." Okay, that was a stupid question. I mean, it's like
Right.
we think we want to say, "Oh, this is a truly welcoming and inclusive space where everyone is valued and appreciated." Well, okay, only as long as you are willing to confirm our version of reality.
Hmm.
These intellectual structures, these ideas of control and separation and stuff. I mean, it's all got to go because it doesn't work. I mean, if it worked, we wouldn't have, this burgeoning nightmare pseudo reality that, we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's the thing. I get excited. These intensifications, I think that they like when I think about it, I don't know how else we get on the other side of this thing.
Right.
I guess I used to think, oh, we'll have this really gradual yada yada, we'll gradually wake up, and I have I'm open to being wrong about it, but the nightmare scenario just seems much more realistic to me at this stage that we have to make things so bad in order for us to kind of shake ourselves and say, my God, like literally, what have we been doing? Like, what have we been doing to ourselves, to each other, to the world? In terms of your own self-care, like, you taking care of yourself. I mean, obviously spending time by yourself sounds like it's beneficial for you, time in nature. Are there any other things that you're doing to kind of support your own well-being, your own care of self these days?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I've been kind of falling into old habits. I've been struggling a bit. I have been focusing more on nourishing my body, and I found out that I had some vitamin deficiencies. So I've been trying to actually tackle that instead of just ignore it like usual.
Good.
But I feel like overall, like I still have been struggling. I'm not doing the things that I wish I could do to kind of foster a better relationship with myself or with source or to feel better. And I don't know, because like there's the whole like, oh, just be thing. But at the same time, I feel like there's things that I know I should be doing to feel better and care for myself. And I don't always know. how to get back on track with that. It's just something that I know I have to get myself to do, but I can't always just wait for the inspiration to strike.
Yeah, I think our minds have a tendency to want to, in this kind of control and domination pseudo reality, our brains, our minds tend to think that what's important are big, obvious, tangible steps. And I feel like real sustainable change for most of us, most of the time, comes from really tiny little shifts in perspective, being, behavior. The more we love ourselves, the more inclined we will be to be and do those things that are good for ourselves. I mean, does that
Right.
make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So the material mind, the brain, it loves, right, doing like, oh, I took my vitamins this morning. And again, I'm not judging any of these things. They're all good and potentially beneficial and all of that. But I'm just looking to make a distinction in that
Hmm.
how often is our brain saying, hey, this would be really loving for myself. Like this would be really, wow, I would just be so happy to do this for myself, to be this for myself, to, enjoy this time or this space or this food, this water, this movement, whatever it is. And I don't know if our material minds really, I don't know. I don't find my material mind thinking those thoughts very much. How about you?
Not always, no.
Yeah, yeah. And even like language like should, like the material mind, the brain, it loves judgment, it loves this kind of should and shouldn't, do and don't, can and can't, these polarities, whereas I feel like our deeper aspects are more like they're more willing to accept and recognize subtle differences and changes. Like some things you've described. Well, I'm spending more time in nature. Okay. Oh, and I'm noticing I feel better doing that. And maybe it makes sense to do more of that. And having the space, the time, the being to notice, what feels better and what doesn't. And in these conditions, in the harshness of the conditions on this planet, I mean, we really need to take time and space to be, to feel, to even engage in these little imaginative journeys of, well, okay, I'll imagine doing this or being this and see how that feels and then make adjustments based on that, like based on how it feels, like not on what other people have told me is the good or right thing to do, or not even what I'm telling myself, because most of what we tell ourselves is just stuff that we picked up from other people that we happen to believe that doesn't necessarily have any connection to the reality of who we are or what we're here to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. That's just my attempt at encouraging you to really be kind and gentle and patient with yourself to because this and my friend Elizabeth in Soul Manifestation series, she talks about this and we've talked about it in our conversations and everything. I mean, this is not a time to push or force anything. Because okay, so when you talk about these energies and how they intensify everything. So they intensify resistance and they intensify responsiveness. So whatever resistance we intensify, telling myself that I have these judgments or these criticisms of myself and that I'd be better and happier, blah, 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 more productive, more whatever. I'd love myself more if I did these things or if I stopped doing these things that I think are so bad or whatever. I mean, like that mode of resistance, that pushing, that forcing of anyone or anything, particularly ourselves, our bodies, it is going to generate an even stronger and equally a stronger equal and opposite reaction or resistance coming back to us from whatever or whoever it is we're resisting. Like these times that we're in, they call for ridiculous gentleness, kindness, patience, ease, flow, joy, lightness. You had used a word like whimsical before, like these kinds of things. That's the stuff we want to intensify in these energies. Anything that intensifies pushing, forcing, that's going to lead to some type of fairly significant breakdown, whether it's
Mm.
physically, biologically, psychologically, emotionally, mentally.
So, do you think you can still try to create different habits, positive habits, or does that still count as resistance because you're trying to change something?
Yeah. When it comes to those habits, it's the idea of what is my intention behind them? Am I seeking to develop these habits out of love for myself and for others? And if I am, then what's the most easeful and enjoyable and gentle way to start introducing these habits? So maybe it's our mind might tell us, oh, you need to do this a half hour every day. Well, maybe the kinder, gentler thing that feels better to start with is, hey, how about, you know what? I think I'm going to start with 5 minutes for this habit and see how that goes, you know? So no, there's nothing wrong with developing new habits. I think it's the energy, it's the intention behind them and our willingness to scale them back to something that feels light and easeful and joyful for us to engage in. I mean, if a new habit is like, let's say your new habit is an exercise routine, and we have this idea of time related to it, and our initial idea is like, okay, I'm going to work out 1 hour a day, 3 days a week, and that's my new habit.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it would probably be kinder and gentler for most people to start off. Maybe you stick with the 3 days a week, but it's like, you know what? I'm going to start with 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes if that feels light and enjoyable, and see if I want to build from there. So it's not necessarily not doing a thing. It's how we're approaching doing the thing. I mean,
Okay.
how does that feel?
Yeah, I like that. I feel like even in, I don't know, spaces that are not really that spiritual, I feel like that kind of mentality sometimes is shared. Like I've my therapist has kind of shared a similar thing and she's not like
Hmm.
overly spiritual. So I think I'm hoping that that means that maybe people are catching on. Um and I think it can be useful in different contexts, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that. I know I tend to be super, super like all or nothing. And that's
Hmm.
something I'm trying to work on just because like
Yeah.
when I get in those mentalities, I can tell that I'm not able to love myself. And it feels, oh my gosh, like it like every possible like negative feeling that could come in just like starts pouring in when I get in those all or nothing
Yeah.
mentalities. And honestly, they can kind of make me spiral a little bit. So
Hmm.
I definitely just want to be more loving and also get rid of some of the urgency. Like, it's not that I want these habits to take forever to form, but sometimes the urgency comes in, I don't
Hmm.
know, it's almost like punitive. And like, you need to get this down right away. Like, you're already behind, blah, blah, blah. And it's so hurtful. So I think honestly, like when I'm talking about, oh, I'm not taking care of myself well enough, well, maybe one of the things I can work on is changing the mentality around it before I try to change like the actual things. Hmm.
Hmm. Right. Everything that you're kind of describing there in terms of what you described as an all or nothing kind of approach. I mean, that's in a way, I haven't really thought of it that way before, but that is resistance, right?
Hmm.
Whenever we think that something is all or nothing, where there is no gray, it's black or white, it's this or that, we have created these false separations. We have taken things that exist as continua of phenomena, and we have drawn a bright line between them, pushed them apart, separated them so that now it's like, okay, everything either fits in this box or this box. But that's not reality, right? I mean,
Hmm.
reality is this flow, it's this relationship and this connection. And so, whatever helps you to not be in that way of being, in that resistant way of being, of all or nothing, pushing, forcing, not good enough, all the judgments and the criticisms and things, whatever helps you to get out of that space and stay out of that space, you want to either be or do more of that. Yeah, because any decisions, and this is something that's really been coming through for me with some other things I've been working on, is that resistance distorts reality. It takes this continuous flow of existence and breaks it up into pieces and parts. It creates these false separations that don't reflect reality, and then we wonder why things don't work. Like, why did my attempt to develop this habit out of this resistant way of being, why didn't it work? It was because I was not dealing with reality. I was dealing with a projection of reality that actually has nothing to do with reality itself. And so anytime that we're in resistance, we're not actually in connection with reality. We have projected an overlay onto the world that looks nothing like what the world actually looks like, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's like yeah, it's like this twisted, distorted lens. And that's why this stuff has to go. That's why we have to wake up from the nightmare, because the nightmare is a result of the fact that we aren't actually connected with reality. We continuously, fairly regularly choose to reinforce something that is pretty much the opposite of reality.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we function at all, really. I mean, how we've set things up, right? Right. These urgencies, these punishments, this sense that time is against me, that, I failed or I'm failing. And, I mean, like failure it's completely, we've made it up. Like all of these things, it's just like they're human constructs that have no independent reality outside of our thinking that they're real.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the challenging thing is, I mean, do you do you have people in your life who are like headed in this direction of not reinforcing stuff that doesn't exist? I mean, maybe this is why we have these conversations, but I'm just curious, like, do you have any people like that in your life? I mean, it sounds like maybe your therapist is one of those folks.
Other than my therapist, I can't really think of anyone. I feel like,
Hmm.
and that's some of the frustration I have, is everyone around me seems to be operating in a different way. And that's not to say that I feel like I'm some special enigma, because I feel like
Yeah.
I get stuck in the same operation. Like I'm
Hmm.
definitely at like the very beginning of discovering things, and I get caught up in it all the same. But
Sure.
I still feel like, there's not really anyone in my life that I can talk to about these things. And then sometimes when I get like, I don't know, maybe a friend that's like a stoner, and like they think that they're being like really philosophical and spiritual, but they're just kind of not. And I'm just like, okay, what are we doing? And it's hard to relate to them too, because I think we're just, I guess we still are thinking differently. And I guess that's okay. Like, I like hearing other people's opinions, but it feels like they're not interested in exploring things differently, because even sometimes I think when people do get philosophical, it's kind of like what you were saying with your professor, is it's like, do they actually want to be philosophical, or do they just want to talk about like what they know and what they think they can prove? I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense what I just said, but
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
something that has always kind of frustrated me. And I do feel very alone. I feel like my friends, my family, like they don't get it, and it
Hmm.
often feels like they don't want to get it. And I just feel lost, because on the other hand, I don't really fit in with like super spiritual people either, because I feel like I'm like one foot on both sides, and I don't always know
Hmm.
what to do. But at the same time, I'm kind of okay with it for now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, everything you said makes sense. I think I've always felt for most of my life that most people just did not get me. And maybe, I'm not that unusual. Maybe everyone feels that way. But, I felt that pretty much acutely. Things that mattered to me that I considered to be real and important, other people dismissed as like, so what,
Right.
and I now have a few people in my life that, and I count you as one of those. Thank you for
Hmm.
being you. Who are more open to possibilities, to things, yeah, being different. And I think that the future for us looks really bright. That the time is going to come where we will have more and more people around us who are curious and interested in who we are and why we are the way we are when other people are very different. Right now, it's because of this veneer. A lot of people can make it appear like everything's okay, even as like they're falling apart internally.
Yeah.
And that's actually a skill in this world. It's a handy one when you live in really harsh, false reality like the one we've constructed. And one of the things I'm really interested in doing, and I haven't gotten anywhere near where I want to get to it, but I really have this desire to co-create a real spiritual community, like one that really recognizes the uniqueness and diversity of different people, that makes a distinction between religion and spirituality, where people's spiritual journeys can totally include religion, but the recognition that a lot of people are just, they're not really interested in using a lot of what religion has, and so they're looking for a much more individual kind of journey. And yes, for spaces that have real vulnerability and relationship and connection. And so, I mean, I'm working on some of these things with some different projects and stuff, but I want to see so much more of this available for so many more people, so that more people don't say things like that, this sense of disconnection or loneliness, that there are people that, even if we don't completely understand each other, that we're at least willing to listen and to connect and to be open to the possibility that other people might be perceiving and experiencing things that are completely and absolutely real for them, even if we really have not had similar experiences ourselves. Yeah, so I hope to see much more of that kind of thing in the future, and I'm interested in doing what I can to help create those kinds of spaces and communities, where people are simply accepted as they are, and where they can be themselves without the kind of like, well, if you're not going to use my language or subscribe to my theory, then you're
Mm.
out, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I have hope. I feel it's possible. I have experiences that lead me to think that this is possible, and so I'll keep working on that stuff. I think for a lot of us at this stage, the world and humanity being what it is, it can be pretty lonely and isolating. But I do feel that it's temporary. It sounds like you have a similar sense of that temporary nature of this insanity yourself too.
Yes, absolutely.
We're getting near the end of our time here. Anything that you would like to express before we sign off here, Claire?
Just that I'm thankful for the opportunity to get to chat. I feel like it always helps kind of bring me back to focusing on what I want to be focusing on. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate our conversations very much. I like your perspective, what you're sharing, because I feel like what you're experiencing, that there are lots of other people experiencing very similar things, and maybe even by us publishing, these conversations that we have, that maybe some folks can feel a little less lonely or disconnected, and be like, oh, okay, there's other people in the world,
Hmm.
like this, who experience these things, and who um, care about them, and things. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Good.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Wake Up Call for the Soul with Bill and Claire. May we love ourselves and all more and more with each passing moment. We wish you the very best and highest. Until next time.